No, it was just that, I didn't know if I was gonna make it tonight. I
Oh,
was,
you sent me a
running
text?
late at work. I don't know.
Oh, no, I was
It says
I didn't
maybe,
see
it
anything.
says maybe Steve Shabbat.
Maybe, right?
Maybe.
Nah, I don't see anything.
Oh, then it says Lynn Shabbat. Is that your?
Yeah, right.
Oh, yeah. If you sent a text to her,
She may have gotten it, so tell her
Yeah,
to,
that's
tell her,
good.
I apologize for me. I thought it was,
yeah, that's all right.
I don't know why I have hers.
For some reason, a lot of our texts don't.
They cross.
My daughter was texting my wife the other night, and I was getting on, and I'm responding to them. She said, "What are you doing responding from mom's phone?" I said, well,
Yeah. Well, tell her to disregard.
Right.
So it defeats the purpose.
Yep.
I know why my phone hasn't been ringing. I just got a new phone, but the shut off is the opposite direction.
Oh, then there you
So,
go.
I've been turning it on when I
I think you turn it off,
turning it
thinking
off
of-
when I thought I was turning it on.
Yeah.
So now I gotta get used to it.
Yeah.
Why do they do stuff like that?
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Hey Doug.
you could proudly wear that shirt after the last 2 nights, huh?
Wait, I'll tell you know,
Hi, Rita.
the
Hello,
stuff,
how are
the
you?
bottom may dropped out, but I'm happy right now.
Yeah.
With all those guys
Be
on
happy when you
on the
can.
disabled list,
Huh?
with all those guys on the disabled list,
How can you win?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, you look, they did an interesting thing in the paper here, they showed the field, they put all the positions with the injured guys. And somebody said, like a possible all-star team. That's missing
Yeah.
9 guys that would be
Yeah.
starters on other teams.
Sometimes as soon as I say that, as I do.
Mhm.
But the kids are doing well, so.
Are these things for SIGs?
Yeah.
On the street?
Hi, Tony.
You hanging out?
I wasn't planning on.
Cause I wasn't quite sure
No, he's not.
what you wanted to do.
Well, that's what I'm here for, I just ran from
Okay.
the track that was up there, was that?
You're here for that,
Yeah.
where is it, up on, can't remember what street it's on, the no parking thing, or? It's in your district.
RZ and Smith,
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
yeah. I'm also here for this.
So what-
plan of the speed bumps.
I already have the report semi-written, so, but I'm not sure,
All right, so
that's all it said, you wanted it, no parking at the intersection, but I don't know what, I'm not quite sure what that meant.
this is Smith,
Smith and, what was the other one?
RZ.
Ardsley, yeah.
Ardsley, is that Ardsley Street or Ardsley Avenue?
I had to look up on the map.
Ardsley Street, right?
Correct, correct, Smith Avenue. So here, there's no stop sign, right here, and this is the post office is over here. So what it is, the neighbors are complaining that they can't see. The cars stop there. I want to have a stop sign, it is an intersection, but what it is people parking trucks here on this side.
Good,
trucks on
I'm
this side.
good.
So we want no parking within
I'm here, right?
20 feet of it.
20 feet.
What could be better?
On both sides of the intersection between Smith and Ardsley.
Hey Doug,
Hey,
Scott Davies?
huh?
Scott Davies?
Oh, yeah, Scott, yeah. I'm glad you came, but it was kind of a funny happenstance.
Yeah, right.
But, yeah, I meant to send it to someone, to send it to you.
I thought somebody told me that.
But I know we had talked about it.
Yeah, right. I sent you an email today, by the way, with some pictures and video, so.
Oh, no, I
help
didn't
me-
see it.
Yeah, I sent it
I
very
think we
late.
need it,
Ah.
we don't need it.
So,
No, I was
because
gone.
it's
Yeah,
already-
I didn't see
So,
it.
but I don't know if my presence here is gonna, I don't know what, because I guess I don't have a chance to speak in the public.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the chairman's prerogative, but
Okay.
when I'm chairman, I always try to give people a chance.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right, so I'll hang out and watch the sausage being made.
that's about it. Steve, who's the chairman?
Yeah,
He's busy at the moment.
yeah, I spoke to him a little bit before you.
Yeah, yeah.
so.
so we'll try, because I know we had spoken about, other people want the speed bumps too.
This is speed up, this is getting the repaving.
Sorry, the repaving, yeah,
Right.
and the city engineer will be here.
Okay,
So I was just at another meeting where he's ended up talking about sewer upgrades.
okay, all right,
So he's coming up. All right.
okay.
Yeah, all right, good, glad you're here.
I can move myself.
Scott?
So you don't need me, right?
Scott?
You don't need me for anything?
No, I-
Chairman Steve.
Yeah,
Steve Chavez.
I introduced myself to him before.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
all right.
yeah.
Good evening. He's here
I
to,
just wanted to make sure you had.
unpredictable series of events, but he wants to ask
Hi, Ray.
questions about repaving on,
Thanks for that letter,
And
the
John's
letter
gonna
that
be
you
here,
sent,
Phil's gonna be here.
from Zaley, I forget her name, but the housing,
Oh, yeah.
the letter was great.
I have another one or two too also, and then we'll try to do some wrap-up stuff later on. Do you know what TMI is, the organization? Do you like it? Yeah? Okay. Huh? No, I'm on the board,
Since when?
beginning of this year. Yes.
Oh. So have you been to some of the performances?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're on another board?
Uh-huh.
Board of what?
The TMI project,
Do you know Shalom Brown?
TMI.
Shy?
they do a lot of
Shy Brown?
storytelling.
Huh?
She's
Storytelling.
involved with TMI. Yeah,
Storytelling.
she's told her story a couple of times.
Mhm. Ah.
There's talk of you joining the board. You don't need free time.
Here, you sign me.
What we got here? This is Jeffrey.
Jeffrey said he wasn't gonna be
He's
Yeah,
not
Jeffrey
coming.
can't make it.
I don't recall seeing that. Okay, well then we'll call the meeting to order.
I don't know if anybody's coming from Clinton Avenue.
Right behind you.
Hmm?
Right behind you.
Oh, from Clinton Avenue. I'm Doug.
Hi, Lisa.
Lisa, hi.
Okay,
You Sean coming?
it appears we have nobody from, calling the meeting to order. I don't see anybody from the Conservation Advisory Council.
They're still going on over there. Kevin said he'd be in when they're done.
Okay. All right, and the first item,
There he is.
there he is.
And there he is.
Hey, what's going on?
And there you are.
All right, 1, 2, 3. Just to let you know, the third item has been removed.
Chestnut Street?
Right. And actually, the first item, Jeffrey said he had requested information from the safety officer,
Yeah.
and he would get us that information when he got it, which I haven't seen it, so I'm presuming we're gonna strike that, so.
Strike that too.
Okay. So,
Excuse me, Steve. Andrea said she would wait, she's going in together, she'll be here with us.
oh, okay. Is she gonna, did she say she was gonna speak about, Jeffrey's item? Okay. Right. Oh, we have a form, so. Move along. Okay. So actually, the first item is a, request from Alderman Davis about, they're actually not no parking signs. What he is looking for, there's a situation, it's by the post office. I guess folks going to the post office frequently use that to park, and they park right at the intersection, despite there being a public ordinance that they are not allowed to do that. So on occasion, when it's a problem, we do put in signs saying no parking, here to corner. I know we did it them. Does anybody have any discussions about that? It's a T, largely comes out onto Smith Avenue, right
Mhm.
by the post office. It's a T. Tony is requesting that there be a no parking here to corner on both sides of Ardley Street on Smith Avenue.
That Ardsley comes in like this to Smith,
Right.
and that's on both sides. And why
Any
is that?
comments on that?
I thought he was looking for a stop sign himself.
That's what I thought. Well, he originally said no parking, but you've probably been here on occasion where it's really a problem. I know that there's a city ordinance, no parking within 20, I think,
19 feet.
19 feet, right? Sometimes it just gets way overdone.
If it's anything other than 19, it has to go before the board.
Do what?
If it's anything other than 19, it has to go before council.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. Usually, we have the sign placed at 19 feet, just to kind of reinforce the ordinance.
Yeah, you don't have to act, you can just ask, I mean, if the board concurs, I mean, if the committee concurs, you can just ask DPW to put up a
All
sign.
right, I still thought we had.
Yeah, you don't need a resolution because you're not changing the code.
Okay, all right, we'll send you something then. Okay. All right. That item is all taken care of, all right? I don't know if anybody was listening in. We don't need a resolution to put a sign at 19 feet. They can do that on their own. We just have to request it. Okay, we don't need a resolution for it,
Okay,
all right? So that's out. Okay.
Chestnut North to the
Yeah,
south.
so we're moving right on down here. We have a request from me.
Hunter comes into Home Street like that?
Which one?
Hunter, is that the one we're on?
Hunter, this section is between Work Street and Home Street.
Is this one that comes into Home Street like this? Trying to remember where Hunter is.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
intersects Home.
T section or?
It is, well, actually Hunter continues through,
Okay. Uh-huh.
kind of in a roundabout way, it really doesn't go straight through.
And it's just to remove a sign. Yeah. Thank you.
I move that we remove the sign.
You're gonna move that, okay, you're gonna remove it too? How about that?
Okay.
Depends what the pay is.
Okay, so we have a motion,
Motion.
actually Rennie already made that motion.
Okay, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed to that? Okay. Move past them. Put that together. There you go. Okay, now I don't know if this is the same discussion about Clinton Avenue?
No.
This is something.
They're two different things.
This is a different part of Clinton Avenue.
Different part.
One is involved drug activity, one is involved in street hunts. New business at the end of street hunts.
Okay. Is that you? Are you here to speak
Yeah.
about? Okay. Okay. Has everybody had opportunity to read this over thoroughly?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I just did.
Okay.
Was this sent out? I didn't even see this.
You were there?
My name is Lisa Collins.
Oh, okay.
PhD.
Okay. Now, did you wanna speak about this, or is this?
I had sent some emails. Did you receive the email? A copy of the
No,
email?
I think,
There's two Clinton Avenue
two
items.
Clinton Avenue, year later.
Oh. Well,
Well, we're neighbors.
we're neighbors, so she came with me.
I'm assuming that
Okay.
we're talking
No, no.
about the same thing because we live next door to each other.
We're talking about the speed humps?
You're talking about speed humps. This is about drug activity and illegal
Right.
activity on Clinton Avenue.
You
near
are-
Clinton
you're
Avenue.
I'm
Renee,
not taking
right?
responsibility for that.
No, no, we're speed humps. We're neighbors. We're just.
Okay, all right.
Very different issue.
Yes.
Two Clinton Avenue.
So Renee
Got
isn't
it.
here. for
Um,
this.
But we don't want drugs in our section
Yeah.
either.
Okay, so Renee is not here. I was kind of presuming you were Renee.
Oh, no, I'm Lisa.
Oh, okay. All right. Does anyone here want to speak about this letter? Are you familiar with the letter? Probably not, right?
No, they're in a different
Two
neighborhood.
different Clinton Avenue.
It's a long street.
Well,
It's a
they're
long
not in
street.
different,
Okay.
they're on the
This
same
is in
street.
Europe.
Same street, different neighborhoods.
This is,
Okay.
yeah. There actually was a meeting held the other night
Right.
regarding this right
I
here.
mean, what they're saying is there's not enough police coverage.
Yeah, okay. All right, we will certainly forward this to the chief.
Well, one thing she's wondering about is the possibility of hiring more police officers. So, I mean, we can certainly talk about that when the budget time comes around. You know, we are, I think, short one or two police officers according to the number that the police chief has said would be the right number. I mean, they have enough to do what they need to do, but some of the things she's asking for certainly would be up to the chief, because if she's asking for more bicycle patrols, that's not something that we would adjudicate, of course. But,
Right.
you know, he needs to see this, and I'm sure he knows already since there were two police officers present at that meeting, right?
Well, I wasn't at the first meeting, I was at the second meeting. So, but, this goes back a couple months though, right?
Mm-hmm,
Yeah. Some of this has been addressed already.
okay.
So, but yeah, I would suggest to forward it to the chief.
Okay. And that's what we will do with that. Okay. So our next item is about North Street. Is everyone aware of the situation down there? There is a request from the Brickyard that be closed off for security reasons. But we would need action by council and our committee to actually close that section of the road. For all intents and purposes, that section of the road is closed anyway. You can't go more than 20 feet past that sign. Yes, Dan?
Well, actually, there are a number of ways to accomplish what people are asking. You can either pass a resolution to, close the street, subject to, the mayor granting a permit for access. The easier way to do it, under the city charter, which I have copies for everyone, the superintendent of public works has the authority to discontinue the use of the street upon direction of the mayor with the consent of the property owner. The request is coming from the property owner, so obviously they will consent. And as long as reasonable accommodations can be made for them to access their property, that is that has been, affirmed repeatedly by New York State courts. There's a provision that's clearly set forth in our charter. For the most part, we're bringing it to you to keep you, informed of what's going on, to let you know what the options are. Again, you can do it by resolution, and then we can do it basically by directive from the mayor. And the property owner has already consented. So if you want to pass that around, it's C14-1 sub B, which sets forth the authority of the superintendent of the
So, we do or do not need to pass a resolution?
You don't need to pass the resolution, okay?
Right.
You can pass the resolution to actually close the street rather than discontinue the use of the street, pending improvements and pending changes.
So what's the, which route shall we take on that?
I mean, our office's recommendation is you take the path of least resistance, which is, you apply the, charter. The mayor, directs the Department of Public Works to discontinue the use of the street with the consent of the property owner, subject to, reasonable conditions being placed on discontinuance for their access to their property.
Okay. Does everybody understand that?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So I guess we will take that path.
Do you have anything as the superintendent of public works?
We are currently discussing several things that are happening down there, in regard to the building out of that property, and also the continuation of that road for future development. So, there are, I think we want to do the path of least resistance now at a temporary level until the engineering studies can be done for everything that has to happen down there, and then go through planning.
Okay.
And this leaves the discretion with Public Works to, reopen it and to,
Alright.
address issues as they arise rather than a resolution, which would have to go back to the council and be revisited.
Okay. All right, I have no problem with that. So we can get rid of this resolution then. Okay, moving along. Actually, we have two different items about,
It's the same issue, but we didn't find out, that's why it's two different
Renumbered.
communications. It's the same thing.
right,
Apparently, last year there were, numbers used twice for resolutions. So our recommendation is we enclose we gave you guys the legislation list from last year, so you can see what we're talking about. So we're suggesting that, the March resolutions, Mark 32, 33, and 34 be 32A, 33A, and 34A.
okay. And then there's another one for,
Same type of issue.
what section was the
That
other one?
that was April of 2007, that was, April of 2017.
And,
What
It's
number
the
was that?
same.
I had it written up. Do you know what section that is offhand?
It is,
D? Now, I can
the
put all these on one
resolutions, again, it
resolution,
would
right?
be,
Yeah,
for 17, all it is one resolution, where 66 appears both in March and in April, number 66.
66,
That's from, March and April 2017 is that one. So we're suggesting that, the one in April be 66A.
okay. So we have a resolution to renumber March and April resolutions as follows, as per attached. Resolution 32 to 32A, Resolution 33 to 33A, Resolution 34 to 34A, and Resolution 66 to 66A.
Now, the ones, the 32, 33, and 34, you might want to make note that they're from 2018.
Okay,
The
they're all
66 is
March
2000,
2018, right?
Yeah, and the other one is 2017.
motion?
Motion.
Your second?
Second,
Leah?
yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Steve, I'm gonna have to run over to the other meeting.
Okay.
Do you guys want a, conservation council update, or?
Yeah,
Yeah.
are you all set?
Oh, yeah, I'm all
Okay.
set, yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, I'll make it really fast. We're doing the.
Well, that's what we like.
Okay, the open space plan, May the 14th. I believe we're gonna be in the council chamber. And, the consultants will be there, and so it'll be the rollout of the plan. And then shortly after that, we're gonna be, it'll be, tweaking the final text, and it'll be submitted to the council for further review.
May 14th, you said?
Yes.
What time?
Let me get the time on that.
I'm not sure I checked.
Yes. Let's go back to the CAC minutes here. Oh, and Doug, while I'm looking that up, you had asked me last time about the kilowatt capacity of the proposal of the solar at the Murphy Center. 60 to 80 is what they're looking at, and they're still looking at data, so they're a ways off before they're actually moving on that. They still have to have a sit down with Kevin Gilfetta and, sort out.
60 kilowatts?
It could be 80. They're looking at the data. And then they're looking at the roof. They're looking for floor plans, which so far haven't turned up.
So how many panels is that?
Ooh,
Six-
how many
60,
panels
70
is that?
panels?
Yeah.
I know you don't.
Something, no, I don't wanna, no, not especially for on camera.
All right, all
I'm
right.
not making representations to that, but, that was what I was told would be the capacity. And the CAC, for the last time, we're doing the other meeting, May 14th. And what else do we have on there today? Oh, Steve, you had asked about the window retrofits and the LED lighting. Yeah, that's, I believe that's all in the works. They're trying to get that done ASAP.
Okay.
That's moving.
That being a relative term, huh?
Well, no, I think it's moving. No.
Yeah,
They had to do a request for proposals or request for bids, however you want to phrase that, and then it came back, they had the contractor, and I think that's where they're at this point. And the, last thing-
But that'll be done before winter?
I think they're trying to get that done literally ASAP, 'cause,
Okay.
I mean, you can feel how warm it is in here. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And the same with LED lightings in municipal buildings, they're working on that as well.
Okay.
And the CAC, the last one. Open space plan. Lost on my hard drive here. I believe we were gonna do that, I think at 6 PM, which was our regular meeting. We're just gonna switch it over to the open space plan.
Okay.
If that answers the question.
Thank
And
you.
I'll let you all get back to your meeting, and I'll run over to the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very
All right,
much.
All right,
you.
thanks,
Kevin.
Kevin.
Okay.
Okay. Next, we have what shall we call that, a re-request from Rita?
Oh, yes, that was, I gave the wrong address.
Right.
One of the, residences that
38
wanted handicap. Yeah, I think I
Wow.
said 52.
52, I think, right?
Yeah, and I didn't know if it had to come back or, so apparently it does.
Well, yeah, we would have to have a resolution to put that there.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a resolution to add handicap zone and signage to 38 Van Duzen Street, permit number 420783. Motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna do this before I forget. I don't know if you guys noticed, we got an early agenda that had this item on it, and then a later agenda, this was not on it. There was a letter from me, and I don't see information here about it. There was a communication from me that was on the early edition of the agenda. We had handicap parking on 49 German Street. And then for some reason,
It's
Dee,
on the
did-
website.
did you notice that?
Yeah.
The first one, there was two, but the second one, I didn't see it. You have it?
The one from April 22nd is the one that we got from Jim.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we have a resolution to add handicap sign as zone at 49 German Street, permit number 4560921, expiration date 2/22. Have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
There we go. Okay. Okay. Next, we have a request from the Visitor Center on Lower Broadway. Without us reading it, has everybody had a
Welcome.
chance?
Making my grand entrance.
Has everyone had a chance to read that?
Mhm.
In brief, they're requesting 2 reserved parking spots on Broadway for the Visitor Center volunteers. I mean, my only concern is I don't see that anyone spoke to the Waterfront Business Association about that. I would kind of prefer that they were in a loop about giving up 2 parking spots. We do have the municipal lot that adjoins the building.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure why we couldn't use that for the 2 parking spots. I think it's actually the same distance away. You know which one, you know what we're talking about here?
I know what you're talking about, that's the request that they're making.
Alright,
I will tell you why. They're saying that people on the weekend are very elderly, and if they can't find a place to park, they just go home and don't open the visitor center.
alright.
One
Well, she's saying specifically the volunteers.
That's the
Yeah,
volunteers,
the volunteers,
but
right.
they don't have staff there on the weekends, so they rely on the volunteers. And if
Right.
the 2, and I guess they're up there in years, and if they can't find a parking space, they leave and never open
They're
the
out,
visitor
huh?
center, so
Alright,
that seems to
Okay.
be the problem.
how does everybody feel
Well,
about that?
does that mean these parking spaces 24/7 would be for for
No.
volunteers? In which case, probably most of the time
Yeah,
it'd be
she-
empty.
She put times down on it.
She's not really specific about what she would like. She lists some time volunteers are there. She doesn't really say exactly when she would like the parking spots available.
Well, it looks like it's
They
11 to
have-
5.
They're there 11 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Right.
and then 2 p.m. to 5 p.m.
And it's just
Saturdays and Sundays. All right, so I guess that would be Saturdays and Sundays from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. That would be my guess.
So the sign would say that.
The sign would say no parking
Or
Saturdays and
reserved or
Sundays.
something.
Yeah, how would, if it said no parking?
Yeah, well, it
You
would,
can't say
yeah.
no
Yeah.
parking.
Yeah, no, you'd have to have something specific, otherwise you're taking away 2 spots all the time, so.
Well, again, you can't say for the visitor center, because then it would, I mean, if you want it specifically
Yeah.
for the volunteers, you'd have to say 2 spots, visitor center volunteers,
We would
11 to
have,
5.
we'd have to somehow say reserved parking.
Do you know how to
From,
do that?
maybe from, with those times on it.
You have to put the times on,
Yeah,
otherwise if
I
you say
mean,
no
reserved,
parking,
you have to say
But if it
reserved
says no
with those
parking and they're
signs.
parked there, how are the police,
24/7.
how are the police gonna know that they're,
Be parking by permit only, if anything.
we would have to give them permits then,
Right,
right?
and you would have to enforce, and on the weekends, we don't have the enforcement.
Right.
And we
So
wouldn't
they don't
want no parking after the 5, I mean, because parking, it's hard to find parking down there
Right,
for dinner.
absolutely.
So we don't want to take away dinner hour parking on Saturday nights.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, that's peak time down there.
What was it, 11 to 5 a.m.
Yeah.
you wanted?
Yeah,
11 to
11
5.
a.m. to 5
That
p.m.
Saturday and
Saturdays
Sunday?
Sundays.
Yeah, that's what it said.
And they can't park in the municipal lot right next to
I
it?
think
But-
that's full,
Well, it's just,
from what Rick and Fran said, they're having issues.
Yeah, it would be the same
finding
thing.
Any parking that's close, because they're elderly and they can't
Walk.
walk, anything close to the building. Just relaying the message.
okay.
May I
Did-
speak to this
Sure.
on the question? I'm one of the volunteers.
Oh, good.
Well, you're not that
But I'm
old.
the elderly guy. You can walk.
I don't fall into that category, but I know that they've tried to accommodate some of the volunteers so that when the 11 to 2 shift ends, they hold the spot that's in the municipal lot, if that person was lucky enough to get the spot in the municipal lot.
Right.
They hold it and then they just switch off. They don't always have 2 volunteers at each time slot. And I don't know how you would be able to accommodate this request,
Mhm.
quite frankly. A lot of the volunteers aren't city residents. And that's another issue, permits and what have you. A lot of them probably don't have handicap permits, but if one were to, at least try to accommodate one. But again, it's the time, 11 to 2 and 2 to 5, Saturday and Sunday. I don't know what they do during the week.
What if we did just one spot? Because if it's 2 different times,
I mean, I park down
Well,
there.
then they'd have to be, double park waiting for the other one to,
well, no, one leaves at 2, the other one comes in at 2, right? So,
You would open a can of worms with having this, and if you were making a handicap, it would be open to anybody who has
Yeah,
a handicap.
yeah.
There's
Yeah,
no
it would be
reserve.
specific.
I don't think we could use
Whether
handicap.
One or two is.
We don't know that they're handicapped anyway.
Right.
that's the only issue.
Oh, it's not me.
And reserving a spot in that area, it
I
would
hope
open
not.
up a big problem with every other business up and down that street.
I'm not even sure we have the authority to reserve, to reserve a spot for a particular entity on a public street.
Okay.
I mean, we went through this when, the water department was.
Right.
So they have no parking down there specifically designated for the visitor center, just the municipal lot, that's
Right.
it?
If there's availability, you can drive around for 20 minutes,
Yeah.
waiting for something to open up.
Yeah, there is no designated parking.
Especially the
for
afternoon
visitor
shift.
center.
The afternoon shift is difficult because if you're having something down at the waterfront, a special event or whatever, you're lucky
If you even
if
get down
you can
there.
get a spot at 11 o'clock. I mean, sometimes I have to go all the way down to the trolley museum and walk back up for lack of parking. So,
Okay.
I would suggest that they discuss it with the downtown.
Well, actually, I was just gonna say,
Yeah.
I mean,
actually, I have a meeting with the Waterfront Business Association next Wednesday. So how about if I discuss it with them at the meeting?
I think we.
well, the shifts start May, the first weekend in May, so that's when we're assigned.
Okay. Well, I think that's for May, next Wednesday is May 1st. So, how's that sound?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sure whatever you decide, they would greatly appreciate something.
Okay. All right.
Table then.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And actually, that, I believe that wraps up our regular agenda. We have some old business that Doug requested we table till this month.
Right.
That's a discussion of speed bumps on Clinton Avenue.
Sean Griffin, who's here several times, has spoken to me about the perceived need by him and neighbors for speed humps, not bumps, speed humps on Clinton Avenue, so I'd like to have you speak to it, and both of you speak to it. And also, Scott Davies is here, who is a constituent who lives on Washington Avenue, has some questions. It's not on the agenda, but I think we can entertain some questions he has on paving on Washington Avenue as a result of all the work that was done. So if you don't mind, I'd like to allow Scott to, after we finish with,
Yeah, let's get this done first.
yeah, okay?
So, I had sent out.
You wanna join us?
Yes,
Yeah,
come
come on
to
up
the
to the
table.
You both, come on up. Lots of seats.
If you wanna be on camera, sit on this side.
If you want your back to Ken, you're sitting over there.
So, I had sent out, an email, I don't know if you had all had an opportunity to read it, but, that basically kind of covers
Right.
my sentiment and what my concerns are. So specifically where we're talking about is on Clinton Avenue between John and North Front Street. So if you, which is right by the Senate Park. So if you were to come down, if you're coming down, Clinton Avenue, then John Street would be on your left. You're coming down and then there is the Senate Park on your left, and then the road forks and you go down Schwenk, and then North Front Street curves very sharply. And we have no crosswalk that's occurring at the park. Last season, they did about 28 weddings at the Senate garage. So we're having a situation where there are a lot of people celebrating weddings, possibly in different states of celebration. And I think it's an accident waiting to happen. We have people who really gun it down, going down to Schwenk to get towards to get to the traffic circle. We don't have enough traffic that's getting diverted to 587 for that purpose of alleviating this. With Washington Avenue being closed for so long, we have a tremendous amount of traffic that's been on Clinton Avenue. This stretch, large trucks and also buses. Our particular street, I was told by someone who's been here over 40 years, they said that it's really more of a kind of a carriage street. It doesn't have a lot of the thickness that many of the other streets do. As a result, all of our houses shake tremendously. And we have had roots in our sewer pipes for over 5 years that we've requested. I mean, I've probably called 15, 20 times over the years asking to get the roots cut, because every time there's a storm, there's back pressure that happens. All the extra traffic and vibration and the speed of, what it is. So if we could have some speed humps, I think it would lessen some of the vibration that's happening as it's going through there with the speed. We have a lot of school visits at the Senate Park, so we have a lot of kids that are crossing the street there, and so kind of right between John and before you get to Schwenk, I think if there's one speed hump and then further down another speed hump, I think it would just really alleviate a lot of the problem. And again, with so many people reveling at weddings, I think it's just a matter of time before someone's killed, because the velocity that people go down towards North Front Street curve is significant. And we both have children, and our children are getting to an age where we'd like to be able to say, yes, you can cross the street and you can go do an errand or go to the park and hopefully not be killed, and because there's not even just even a basic crosswalk there. So I think Lisa probably can articulate better than me. But
No, I totally agree. So I live next door to Sean and his family, and that part of Clinton Avenue people use as like a throughway just to get down to Schwenk. And we live very close to the street right there. Right? We have maybe, I don't know, 2 feet of sidewalk and then maybe a foot of curb. We're like right up on the street. It's very old and
Come
wonderful.
on, it's 2 feet 4 inches at least.
It's tiny. But yeah, it's too fast. I think everyone that has kids that walks on that part of Clinton Avenue holds their breath because it's just dangerous to cross right there. Yeah, so I think speed humps, I guess there's a distinction now between bumps and humps, but Either one would be a saving grace on that block.
Have the police put a speed monitor in there to track how speeding is going?
Not that I've seen.
No, we haven't. We put in probably, a few different reports over the years where we've called, because they said the only way that they would do that is if there were enough reports. And so, I've called periodically over the last few years, but nothing's come of it.
We should be able to get them over there. That shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah. Now, I'm gonna preface any discussion we have with, we certainly appreciate your situation, your concern, especially your concern for your children. That's always foremost in everybody's mind. That being said, we do hear this, I would say, almost every month. Someone comes before this committee requesting speed bumps or stop signs as some manner to slow down traffic, saying theirs is the worst street in town, and it's only a matter of time before disaster strikes. So we do hear this frequently, and we appreciate it, but we have had more requests for speed humps than I can really remember in the last year or so. So with that being said, I will open it up here for discussion, questions to anyone.
I think the first thing is to get the data, and then we need to talk to Diane Berquist too to see. She's the. Have you talked to her ever before? She's the safety officer in Public Works, so she's a really good person to bring in. Talk about these issues, and we're also going to have a traffic safety forum. When is that?
That's Monday, May 13th. So the whole idea is because, like Steve was saying, we have been hearing a lot of this. We don't want to push it away saying it's not important, because it is important, but we want to think of it as a comprehensive instead of one street at a time coming into us and kind of seeing what the issues are. So that's happening May 13th, and it's kind of figuring out what traffic calming can work, what traffic calming doesn't work. I actually had a conversation with Ed and Diane recently about speed humps specifically. The one thing that you mentioned with the vibrations of the speeding, the speed humps could actually create some vibrations in itself too. So that might not actually solve that problem. If you're looking at the big picture, it might be worth that if it's solving other problems. But thinking of the whole thing, and that's what Diane was telling me with speed humps. I don't know if Ed wants to jump in more on that, but because they will create every time, especially if you have two on the street, every time a car goes over that's going to create vibrations too.
Especially because some people are not going to slow down for the speed humps,
Right.
unfortunately.
No, I understand that. I wish I had brought pictures, because the thing about this particular spot is it's such I don't think there's many other streets like it, if not this, where you literally have, you're turning into what becomes a one-way street as you're turning onto North Front, which is crossing Schwenk Drive. So you have a stop sign at Schwenk, and people are already going here and crossing, and you have a lot of people coming up this way, and you have people trying to gun down Schwenk at the same time, and it's a problem. And I know there's been many discussions. I remember many years ago, Tom Hoffey was discussing about changing the direction of Uptown for some of these streets. I know that this gets talked about back and forth a variety of ways, but like I said, there's a very significant amount of people who come to that Senate Park. So it's not your typical street where it's just a matter of us just saying, oh, we're concerned for just our kids. I get that, and how you'd hear that a lot, but we have very high amounts of specific traffic that's happening at that Senate Park. And when you turn on North Front Street, I don't know how this got added, but that used to be 2 lanes, and now somehow they've added this paint bump out now that for parking right in front of the record store. And I don't remember that really, like, how did
It's
that?
new.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's new, but I mean, how did that occur? Because there's now, as you're also turning that corner and people are going at quite a speed, that has not always been there. So, and there are people who are parking there that are loading, and sometimes there are cars there for multiple hours, and it's not being policed. There's nothing that's, making that, those cars move, there's no metered situation there, so there are people often parked there for quite a long time, and if you're having someone whipping around and knowing that it always was a 2-lane and now it's a singular lane, that's another issue that I think a speed hump would greatly, look at.
I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but, I mean, it sounds like a lot of your discussion has at least as much to do with the volume of traffic as opposed to the speed of the traffic.
The speed is a significant part. The volume is, the volume is the volume, but it's just a matter of it's coupled, it's a matter of the high volume with the speed is where I think there's going to be a potentially fatal situation at some point. And that's all.
Steve, I have a question.
Go ahead.
I think you should stop identifying what they're asking for as a speed bump.
Right.
And maybe a speed calming device. You have them on Joyous Lane, and they work perfectly fine. They don't create the vibration the speed bump would create by the bounce. Okay? And perhaps you should start identifying what you're looking for as a speed calming device, like they have a Joyous Lane by the park, and you say there is a park across the street. I can understand if there's a park across the street, why don't they address it like they address the park on Joyous Lane, and put a calming device there, and stop identifying it as a speed bump. Okay, you're looking for a calming device.
I think, let's get the terminology right, I think he is requesting a speed
Hump.
hump,
Well,
right, as opposed to a bump.
Well, I hear the word speed bump
I
several
know.
times from
Sure.
from this young lady here, and
So, right.
from the chair, and I think you should stop identifying it as a speed bump.
Something that would deter the speed, that's fine. I mean, I'm certainly open to.
Thank you very much.
But I think the first thing is to get the speed meter out there. Can you call the chief tomorrow and ask him to put a speed meter out there?
Yeah, I could.
Yeah, that's the first thing, to get the data,
That'd be
because
helpful.
then, if they show there's a certain percentage, if they find that a certain percentage of cars are going over the speed limit, that gives us certain things we can do.
And would it be able to clock it from both directions?
I'm not sure, they would have to.
One on each
Put
side of
one
the
on
street?
each side.
That would be
And
ideal.
what is the speed limit up there?
Well, it's gonna be 30, yeah. And then are there crosswalks painted in from John Street across Clinton?
There's
No.
Okay, cause it's a T intersection, so that's probably a problem there.
Well, yeah,
But there is
crosswalk.
crosswalks painted in
crosswalk
Main
there.
Street.
It's going
On
across,
Front
it
Street
goes
there is.
across
One
John Street, but
crosswalk.
not John,
Yeah.
across Clinton, right?
Right, there's one at
No.
John, but there's
There's one
not
at-
one at mid-block where the
No.
park is.
Right.
Not
But there,
that block.
I think there's
At
one
the
at John
intersection.
Street going just across John Street.
Right.
Yes.
So,
Right.
but not John across
It has to
Clinton.
go somewhere.
Yeah,
It
there
can't
is
be-
one at John Street crossing Clinton Avenue.
Not
No?
that I- not
No,
that I
Main
recall.
Street,
I don't think
Clinton
so.
Avenue.
Maybe it's just a
Main
stop
Street.
Main
sign.
Street and
Yeah.
Clinton Avenue is one.
Don't forget
There's
the
one
large
crossing
body
Main
traffic,
Street.
the large
Mhm.
body.
Not
Right.
one crossing,
Right.
John Street?
Yeah.
Not at Clinton, not at Clinton.
But you need, the crosswalk has to, you have to start at a spot and end at a spot, like there has to be, you can't have like a mid-block crosswalk, that's.
Right, there's nothing on Clinton that crosses Clinton. They have one on John which crosses John. There's nothing at John and Clinton. But when we have crosswalks, they have to go to another ADA compliant
Mhm.
crosswalk, another sidewalk. If that's not there, that has to be built.
Right.
So we can't just add striping to nowhere.
Surely, but I know that the volume that is occurring there, there is a dip from coming from the parking lot that's across the street from the main Senate House for that extra parking.
That's a
And-
driveway opening,
Right, and that would, so I don't know if that
which does not
it doesn't
pertain
pertain.
to a crosswalk.
Okay.
It would have to be identified individually.
What's your address?
I'm at 302.
302, okay. I can't get the picture.
The other issues with the speed humps and the raised crosswalks is there's drainage issues that run with that. You can't just put something across the road from curb to curb, because if you don't have anywhere for the water to go, it's not gonna work.
If there's another way to deter the speed, that would be fine. That doesn't involve that. I'm, you know, certainly open to something. That the main concern that I have is I want to be able to see people who are visiting the park safely cross the street without getting killed, and people who are at weddings not getting, you know, the same situation, and something that's going to get people to slow down, because the rate that people go down
It sounds
is
more like enforcement is a situation here as well.
And if they're parked in the striped zone there when they're not supposed to be, I mean, we can notify the police to
I mean, I've
to
offered,
check on it.
I've offered in the past, I've said to some local police officers that they're welcome to use my parking spot in front of our house during the day, and if they wanna park there, and they wanna do that, that I'm completely open to that.
What about a,
Okay.
what about like cause you're mentioning going onto North Front Street, especially with the loading zone that was added there, like a blind curb sign?
People who drive that route every day, a
Won't
sign is
care.
not gonna do
Alright.
anything. They're people are used to driving that way. So unless there's a police officer sitting there shooting radar or some kind of deterrent, other, you know, I mean, you could throw speed humps all over the city. People are still gonna go through them. You do the elevated crosswalk on Hasbrook and Delaware down here, maybe 50% of the people slow down for it. It's not really used.
Well, it slows you to, I would say, 25. To slow somebody to say 15 or less is very difficult with any of these devices. I would say it's probably not going to have that effect.
I mean, I know that I've seen some signs, there's one in Rhinebeck when you come off like the back road and you're going into Rhinebeck, and there's a little sign, and, you know, it lets you know what your speed is as you're coming in. And, you know, something like, but again, there needs to be some kind of thing, like crossing by the park, children, elderly people. I mean, the amount of people, like, go to the park any weekend, there are so many great functions that they're doing there. There's a lot of people coming into that park all the time. And the wedding business there is booming. I mean, they had to actually,
They're filled every weekend.
but they had to the park actually had to step in and tell them, you cannot have as many weddings, you can't do Fridays and Saturdays back to back every weekend. Or literally, it would be booked every single day. They had to, like,
Is
there's
this
such
something
a
that
volume.
the venue then should be putting a crossing guard out there during these events?
I mean, I think it couldn't hurt, but I think it could be one of a variety of
Because it's being created
options.
by this venue.
Mhm.
Who owns the parking lot?
The parking lot is, I think, is state.
Which is under the park system
Park
for
system.
the Palisades
Yeah.
park system.
The venue itself is creating the problem with the, you know, masses of 100 or so people on a weekend. So, I mean, as part of their doing business, maybe that should be suggested, that if you have people going back and forth across from one side of that street to the other, in an area where there is no crosswalk, maybe they should have some kind of security.
Right, but at the same time though, even just for average people, just kids walking home from school and
Right,
things
I
like
might
that.
be mistaken, but I think I've had this conversation with the chief before, that they did actually have the sign there for a while, and very, very little speeding happening there.
Yeah, because the speed limit is 30.
Is it possible to have a speed reduction there, mandated speed reduction?
And
Because
then
maybe every
then it
street
gets
would
back
be
to
a
enforcement.
To allow for the surface water to pass by.
Right.
They'll have to go curb to curb.
Now, is it safe to say, you're saying most of this is during the times when the venue is having activity? Or are you talking about all day, every night?
People race down that road.
What?
People race down that road.
I mean, these kids with the big mufflers, it's like, it's a game. It's like, I think there must be some bragging rights somewhere where it's like, I took North Front Street at 70 miles. Oh, really? I took it at 75. I mean, it's outrageous.
And the reason I'm asking, because I travel at 3 mornings a week.
Mhm.
And this morning, I was on there at 9 o'clock. And the traffic was, and I'm gonna say literally moving at a snail's pace. Cars were not moving at all. I mean, they were going so slow through that section because it was a very high volume, and they have to stop at the stop sign, it backs them up.
Yeah, I
Then
don't,
they get to the red
I
light,
don't
backs them
particularly
up
see how
even
you
further.
can really speed, how do you,
If you,
because this,
because there's more,
The stop
because that
signs
road
and
isn't
traffic
only
lights.
used twice during the day, it's not only used during rush hour. So when it's a non-rush hour time, people gun it down that road. I am not exaggerating, well over 60 miles an hour, if you're going down Schwank, it's outrageous, the speeds that people
Well,
are.
I say, Doug, if you can call, Chief Tinsey and let's have the data to stand behind this and then
Yeah, I
figure
think
out what some solutions
yeah.
are.
Yeah, let's get some
Great.
data together and.
You know, and I think it would make sense to do it on both sides of Clinton and also going down Schwank or at the corner of North Front. I mean, you could hit something going down Schwank and something on each side of Clinton, and as you're turning on North Front, and I think you'd be very surprised at the data you'd be getting.
I think, if I'm not incorrect, I think they only have 2 of them, so, right?
Okay.
So the data collector one, so we may, have to do one at a time,
Sure.
and it needs to be someplace else, but
We only have 2, you said?
2 of the data collectors.
There's also a question of where to put it, just in terms of having it off the street so that. it doesn't-
Right, yeah, they take up a lot of space, so.
Right, you'd have to park it on the sidewalk, basically.
Yeah.
It
So
would
that's
have
why I
slow
need-
traffic if it were in the lane.
And just since we do have some of it's engineering, yes? Yeah, so we do, I know that the root cutter was broken for several years, that is able to cut roots in the sewer system, and then I know that there had been an outside vendor that had been utilized, and their work was supposed to be covered for X amount of years, and my understanding is then that the root cutter got fixed, but we weren't using it because things were still under warranty, and that the city council was going after them in court to try to come and honor the contract or the terms that they had, instead of cutting the roots that we have been waiting on for 5 years. Every time it rains, I have sewage that comes through my foundation. If I don't call and say, could you jet the line on the corner of John? And it's most of the time, they're pretty good with just kind of doing that as a standing order, but I've been waiting and waiting and waiting, and, it's insane, and the previous gentleman, I believe, had retired, I've had so many conversations about this, and it was always, oh, it's broken, and it was just broken and broken and broken, and then it was like, oh, now we got an outside person, oh, and they didn't do it right, so we're gonna blame them, instead of at some point just saying, we have this thing, it works, and we've had this issue, and there should be no question about not knowing about it at this point, and why it's not getting cut is beyond me, because I've been paying a commercial rate on my building for many years, and I just wanna be able to get the basic services that I am paying for, because it's been an issue for well over 4 or 5 years for me.
I'll look into that. I started this back in September, so it's kind of new to me. I hadn't heard of this, situation
Right.
there at that location. But I will look into it.
Thanks. That's all.
Okay, and I will talk to the chief to see what we can do about monitoring traffic, and I think, the idea of you, coming to the traffic safety forum on May 13th is probably a good idea.
Yeah, encourage
To
that.
keep this,
maybe.
keep this visible.
Right, and as Mr. DeFalco had said before, there are different types with the speed hump, stopping short of the curb. That's gonna fall on engineering to design, make sure that doesn't interfere with anything for storm system. If it's deemed at some point to put an elevated crosswalk there, like what we have down on Hasbro, that particular type needs drainage on both sides of it, because that will dam up water. So,
Yeah, and I'll caution you, the one here on Hasbrook, I don't think it slows the traffic below about 25.
Right.
So I don't think that's gonna satisfy you.
It's better than 60.
25 is better, yeah.
When we're
25.
talking that kind of speed, that's more an enforcement problem. I can guarantee you, if we put speed humps in there back to back, you'll have more complaints about noise and vibration than what you have now.
Yeah, making someone slow down is that they speed up to get to it, then they hit their brakes to go over it, then they accelerate rapidly away, you know.
And
it-
those loud mufflers, you'll hear nothing but that in between them.
Yeah.
Stop and go, stop and go, stop and go.
Okay,
They're
well,
trying to
I
match
mean,
up
but,
the
you know,
last
by
time.
and large, I know enforcement in general, I mean, I know that they had tried, briefly, it happened early on, in this present administration where they started going back to having, police officers, you know, walking in the neighborhood. And that visibility was certainly helpful, but, we haven't seen that in a
I
long
think
time.
we'd be better apt to talk about this at the May 13th.
Yeah, and at the May 13th, we will have Chief Tinsey there, so we will have enforcement, we will have our safety officer there, so there will be a bunch of different, so you might be able to grab on to different ideas too, and make sure they also hear what the problems are too.
I'm gonna ask again then, make sure. Yeah, so thanks for letting us know. We're clearly aware, but like we said, we've seen this all around town. And so what we're trying to do is, we have the Complete Streets Council. We're including them in these discussions, DPW, engineering, police, everybody, because we gotta find some solutions, because we're hearing about speeding all over town. We've clearly got more issues with volume in certain parts of town. So unfortunately, you have to do the study, you have to do the work and find out what's the actual best way to fix the problem, and that's what we're trying to figure out.
It does seem that 587 gets terribly underutilized,
Mhm.
you know, for being like the smallest interstate, or you know, whatever it is in the country. But, you know, there just doesn't seem to be that diversion of traffic that should be going to it. So anyway, thank you. Yeah. Do you have a thought?
I've seen all the plans to add an extra ramp for that. It's been going on since I've lived in Kingston, so that's why I smirked.
Adding an off-ramp off of it? My understanding is that if they did that, they would have to return the federal funds that they received when they built it initially with the Army Corps of Engineers to make it from being non-swampland to usable. That's what I heard. I'm not sure if it's true. Thank you.
Well, we'll keep after these.
Okay, yeah, we appreciate you coming,
Thank you.
all right?
And Scott has volunteered to come tonight because he's talked to me a number of times about what are the plans for repaving. And I know they've got a lot of streets to repave, we understand that. But Scott and some of his neighbors live on Washington Avenue, so I don't want to speak for you speak.
Okay,
You want us to join us? This is Scott Davies, who lives on Washington Avenue between Lucas and Main. I forget the number.
Oh, yes.
Yes, so I live on Washington Avenue between Lucas and Main, and the condition of the pavement is pretty terrible. The Central Hudson did their work of replacing the gas lines, and I'm sure you've heard a lot of complaints about this. Now the street is like a washboard. And because we are a major truck route through the city, what happens is it almost makes like a standing wave when the trucks come through. You know, the first set of wheels hits, there's another one, and our houses are all shaking, our plaster's cracking. I can stand, and it's not just even at the street level. I can stand in the backyard, just in the yard, and I can feel the trucks when they come by and the Trailways buses. I understand there's lots of streets that need to be repaved. Some of them may even be worse than Washington Avenue. But I think that because of the heavy truck traffic that we get, I'd like to see Washington Avenue bump up on the repaving list. And also, Washington Avenue has not been milled for years, and there are virtually no curbs left on this section of Washington Avenue. We have water that runs up onto the sidewalks. In the winter, it freezes. You know, we all have been trying to fight that battle. There's a couple of factors I think that also might warrant some consideration. We have very sandy soil in that section, which I think is part of why the vibrations seem to be, you know, propagating. So it's not even just when they hit the bump in front of my house. I feel it when they hit the bump down at Lucas. Every bump I can feel, you know, I can gauge where the cars are by how much my house is shaking, you know. And another thing that's I would think would be of concern is the Washington Avenue Tunnel. In the block that I'm in, it's where it makes its rapid descent from about 20 feet down to about 80 feet from that Larios drawing. These vibrations have got to be hitting that tunnel and doing Lord knows what to it. So, unless we want another sinkhole. But I've lived on Washington Avenue for about 33 years, and through various conditions of the pavement, it did get repaved, I think maybe about 15 years ago, and that really settled the shaking down when that happened. Now, of course, it's in a much worse state because of the Central Hudson work. And also, part of the Central Hudson, it's not just a strip that's parallel to the direction of traffic. Every connection, there is a strip that went across the street. And, you know, it's maybe only that much, you know, an inch or two depressed, but when you have an 18-wheeler coming, hitting those things, every house.
Depressed,
Yeah.
down, so the truck goes down.
Yeah, sometimes, and sometimes it goes up. It depends on which one. You know, I think that the, is it Millen or Mullen? Mullen? I think they did a pretty decent job of patching it, and if this were just a residential street, I wouldn't be complaining, you know, but it's definitely the truck traffic that's you know, the cause of it.
Okay, well, I see everybody turning their head to me. Off the record, kind of want the person over there to be off the record.
It's
I
being,
should-
it's being recorded. Yeah, it's being recorded.
Between us.
Between us, I'm trying to negotiate something with Central Hudson
Uh-huh.
on a price to actually pave Washington Avenue. What they're offering is not enough at this point. I'm going back and forth with them, been arguing this for probably 4 or 5 months now.
Okay.
The Public Service Commission is the one who's making them do all these changes. So, I've asked several times, some people to maybe send some letters to them in regard to this. I can talk all I want to Central Hudson, and, you know, they're like, no, too bad, too sad. So, they're being made to do something, and Mullins is being made to do something for them, so on and so forth. It's the food chain, can't be helped. But it is in my plan to come up within the next several weeks, depending upon scheduling, to get something paved out there.
When you mention letters from people, are you talking about residents of Kingston, or are you talking about like
Well, I think the
council?
council might wanna reach out, and others who might have any pull, to, you know, to the higher office of the Public Service Commission.
But don't they have to repave anyway, right? I mean, isn't there,
All they have to do is patch.
oh, I thought they were required to repave on top of what's there.
No.
They did a rotten job on patching.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
they do.
actually have a two-part system. Mullen is patching what they have done, with the binder course. Then they have BTM come in and do a overlay with the top. The problem is that I've been finding is that when they do their work, like, you know, in the fall or through winter, it settles out, and a lot of those things have been paved over and then settled again.
They go tamper.
Well, they do, I'm out there, I'm inspecting, but the type of soil, the type of materials they use, it's just, with that heavy traffic, you know, no matter what you do, it's gonna settle some. So, with negotiations with Central Hudson on this, I told them I want a full overlay of that, with a mill first, I'd probably mill it down 2-3 inches.
They made a commitment to do this? They made a commitment to
They
pave
haven't-
the street?
They haven't made a commitment on anything other than to possibly pay for it, if I
Pay for it.
pay for the blacktop.
Well, it's the season now, and I don't think you're gonna get anything, and I don't think you're gonna do anything, because now is the season to do it.
The plant opened last last week.
Well, it's March 15th, doesn't it open March 15th?
No, it does not. No. The plant opened tentatively March 8th was the April 8th was the tentative date. They fell a week behind due to weather and breakdowns. They are open now. We have Callahan scheduled to come in next week on some of the city streets to start milling and paving. When they get done with that round, then I want them to go to Washington Avenue.
Well, I think Washington Avenue should set a precedence because that's the first place they went. Washington Avenue is where they began. And I think they should start where they began. Okay?
I would just, milling 2 inches is not gonna be, wouldn't be
That's all-
satisfactory.
That's all I can afford. I mean, technically, they don't have to do anything more than what's there.
Cause if they mill 2 inches and then put 2 inches of blacktop
What I
over it, we still don't have curbs.
Milling 3 inches out, putting 2 inches, inch and a half or 2 inches back. That'll give us some reveal on the curb. We wouldn't be able to afford to do the entire Washington Avenue corridor with a full grinding down to depth and a repave. Because when you do that, you have to reset every manhole, every catch basin. You know, there's so many things that have to be done in preparation of that. We would be there for weeks trying to get that done. And the money.
Is there any relief that an individual homeowner could do for the curb in front of his house?
Sandbags.
Pardon?
Sandbags.
Sandbags. Well, I'm thinking of like the UARC house, you know, the UARC house on Washington Avenue. They replaced the sidewalk and the curb with, you know, concrete, and they've got a curb about this big. I'm so admirable. Every time it rains, the water actually goes down the street in front of their place instead of under the.
Well, I mean, if you want to spend the money to have a new sidewalk and curb, it's on the homeowner. That's not the city.
So a homeowner can replace the curb if they want?
Sure.
Okay.
But could we possibly consider writing a letter to the Public Service Commission to try and get Central Hudson to take this? Could we consider that?
No, we should do it. There's no
Okay.
considering, we should do it.
I'm not saying you're gonna get anywhere, but it's, you know.
Doesn't hurt to
help
try.
Coming in at one
help
time.
light a fire under
Yeah.
something.
Nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Just,
I-
now, one question that I've never gotten a straight answer on, is Washington Avenue a state route, and does the state have any say in this?
We may, it's part of Route 32, but it is a city-owned street.
But not where he lives.
Not where he lives.
It's not part of 32
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
in your neighborhood,
In your, yeah.
my neighborhood.
So, because one of the questions people over the years have been trying to reduce the truck traffic, and the answer's always been, it's a state route, we can't do anything.
That's true.
That's true. So, can the state kick in some money to do some maintenance on this?
I wouldn't count on that. They've worked with us, they're hopefully gonna work with us on Albany Avenue to try to do something there.
Yeah.
You know, let's get through that first and see what happens.
Yeah, the same issues are on Albany Avenue. We
Oh, yeah,
understand.
I understand. I'm not saying Washington Avenue's unique, I'm not, like the other person, everybody wants a stop sign, I'm just.
Wait, can I understand this? So the city owns Washington Avenue, but it's designated by the state as a
They
particular.
put a route number on it. That's it.
Okay, so that, in other words, but then what does that mean in terms of determining truck traffic and things like that? Because they put a route number, does that mean we can't?
Well, it's a truck
Reduce.
route,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
designated by the state as a truck route, and we tried to do the same thing on Albany Avenue, which is to cut the
We're just doing the weight
weight
restriction.
Yeah.
and they said no.
And it means restrictions are subject to state rules rather than local rules.
Okay.
So they have no responsibility as far as maintenance?
Correct, and we have a maintenance agreement with the state for that area.
Can we forcibly deed Washington to the state?
Can I ask one other question while I'm here? This is the use of having no engine braking zones. I'm from the Midwest, and in the Midwest, you go through any small town with a state route on it, and they've got signs at both sides of the town, no engine braking or no jake braking. I have been told that New York does not allow that, because on Washington Avenue, when the trucks come through, they love their jake brakes at 3 in the morning when there's no traffic, no reason to be using one, you know, and the whole house shakes and stuff. Is it true that Kingston is not capable of placing a no engine braking restriction? Does anybody know this?
I don't think it would be a,
That jake brake is for high speed, there's no need to use it.
I understand that, but they do,
They
you know?
do, like routinely, often?
Pardon?
Often?
Every time they come.
Right now, there, you know, in Rosendale, there's the retaining wall project. There's a retaining wall that's failing, and they're bringing these huge trucks full of rock through there. Those guys love it. One or two of the Trailways bus drivers love it. Not all of them. Most of the Trailways are fine, but one or two of them, I think it's a machismo thing, you know, so.
Every time they come to the light on Lucas Avenue in Washington, they're using the jake brake.
Yeah.
And they do it 10 miles an hour.
Is that?
but I don't think absolutely no reason to use it, other than noise pollution.
It's meant for high speed.
Okay. And with that,
And safe
We'll
way.
follow up.
we are wrapping up.
Okay, thank you so much.
Entertain a motion
Thank
to
you.
adjourn.
Motion.
Motion.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
Best practices.
Oh, okay.
So what time is the